A goal, Chris Billy, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hello and welcome to The Drive-In, the preview show that casts a big old eye, very much like the Eye of Sauron, over the upcoming Huddersfield Town games. And this week, Charlton Athletic shoot across our bows. And myself, Matt Shaw, and my partner in pod, Ian Kilroy, we're here to preview what should be a tight affair in HD1. So, Killer, I hear you ask me, who are Charlton Athletic? Well, of course, everyone knows who Charlton Athletic are, but let's delve a little deeper. So, Charlton Athletic were formed in 1905 by a bunch of young teenagers. It's true, it's on Wikipedia. In 1906, they joined the Lewisham League 3rd Division before being relatively locally successfully, playing in the Lewisham League, the Woolwich League, and the Southern Suburban League, winning the Woolwich League 3 times, the Woolwich Cup 4 times, the Blackheath League twice, and the Southern Suburban League 3 times before closing up shop for World War I. After World War I, they moved to their current home of the Valley in 1919, before turning professional the year after and joining the Football League in 1921. Charlton's greatest professional honours include finishing second in the top flight in 1937, winning the second tier in 2000 with four promotions from it, and winning the third tier 3 times. The club are nicknamed the Addicts because a local fishmonger supplied haddock and chips to players from both sides after Charlton matches, and with that South London twang, Killer, it became Addick and Chips, Addick. So Addicts from there. So I love little things like that. I love little stories like that. They always make me smile. I love like the good old, when football was the working man's game, Killer, before all this bollocks came in. Anyway, Huddersfield and Charlton first met in January 1926 in the FA Cup during Huddersfield's halcyon days. And of course, Huddersfield defeated Charlton by 1-0 at the Valley. However, though, the first league meeting between the sides was in that 1936-37 season when that strong Charlton side finished second, and they beat the Terriers in both games, and Town would actually fail to beat Charlton in the first 5 league meetings between them. Lose that, Killer, doesn't it, where we seem to start poorly against whoever we've played for the first time. But more recently, Town have won the last 4 games between the clubs, including a 4-0 and a 5-0 home win. And last time out at the JSS, Town won 4-0 just before COVID hit with goals from Steve Mounier, Juninho Bacuna, and a double from Carlan Grant. Overall, the record's pretty even between the clubs. There have been 95 meetings, with Town winning 36, Charlton winning 37, and 19 draws. The clubs have even met 5 times in the FA Cup, and that's even, with Town winning 2, Charlton 2, and 1 draw. And Town have won the only League Cup meeting between the two sides in 2013. Killer, it genuinely couldn't be any closer, could it? In the sort of historical ratings between the club, the historical rankings. Players that featured for both clubs, people remember Chris Powell and Alex Dyer, the management duo, who were very successful at Charlton and did a steady job with us. It was just incredibly dull for the time. But perhaps some people would argue that maybe he laid the platform for what became David Wagner's great success at the club. On the field, though, Mark Hudson, Brendan O'Connell, Lee Novak, Paul Hayes, Ben Hamer, and Martin Waghorn have all featured in the blue and white of Huddersfield Town and the red of Charlton. Have you got any game memories, Killer? We'll go to quirky game memories, because you know me, I love a quirky game memory. I remember once we beat Charlton 3-1 in League One when I was in New York. It was my birthday in August, celebrating that. I think it was my 30th birthday, and Town won 3-1. I do have a quirky game.
You do mean New York in America, and not Rotherham.
I do not mean Rotherham. I do not mean Rotherham. Let's clear that up. I'm not.
Fair
I don't think any memories?
I don't think you can go past the 5-0 win in 2016, January, after Wagner joined in November, I think it was, after obviously the Chris Powell era. And it was kind of when Town just got things clicking a little bit. I think that made it 5 wins in 8. So it wasn't like the turning point per se, but it was kind of the moment where we dominated from start to finish and really put a team to a sword, whereas we'd threatened a few times before then. We'd actually played really well against Middlesbrough not long before that, but lost. And Wagner always spoke about that as being a really good performance. But Charlton, I always thought, and I think Dwayne Holmes got his first goal for Town in that game.
A bit of a deflection, wasn't it?
It was
even someone who someone scored in his Ugg boots from your old land as well, who wasn't particularly popular.
That's where I was going. That's the connection now. We're after them, Matt, the Australian
mate.
connection with Davidson. Well, it was so integral, wasn't it, to the Town team, according to himself after he moved on. Groningen, he went afterwards and spoke about how important it was with us. I can't remember where he went. He was somewhere in Holland, wasn't it? And he ran a few somewhere obscure, but. No, that was a good game, wasn't it? Because it really kind of everyone we knew we were going places, but again, to actually put a team to the sword as we did that day was quite a step forward under the Wagner march to the Premier League. Even though that season, obviously, it wasn't. Then it was the year following, but that's the one I've got, Matt. But it's just surprising we've only played them so few times. To say, typically you'd say we're a similar size club, but we haven't played them excessively, have we? Like we haven't played them for even up until now, 6-7 years ago. It was quite a while ago, and
4. I mean, we've played 95 times, which that's quite a lot, I think, in comparison. But they've been like, but we've played them in the 20s. So a lot of teams that we're coming up against are like 70s and 80s out there when we drop through the leagues. They're sort of from that angle, aren't they? But yeah, we've played them a lot in the like 30s and 50s and whatever. But one game I was going to mention, but I might save it for the away game because that 7-6 at the Valley happened. At the Valley, obviously, so I might save that for that game. But one game I remember, and people may have seen the Cult Heroes series we did when we did Darren Bullock. And there's one game we talked about with Darren Bullock, which was in 1996, and Charlton came to Huddersfield. And Charlton were really good at the time, flying high in what's now the Championship, but was then Division 1. And there was a little midfielder who was a complete little prick, played for Charlton, and I hated him from that very first moment I saw him because he was going in studs up on my favourite, Darren Bullock. And there was an incident in the penalty box whereby there was a corner, and then down in this area, this little shit was proper nipping and punching Darren Bullock, and Darren Bullock turned around and uppercutted him on the way out. And when the ball got cleared, just uppercutted him on the way out and laid him out in the penalty box. And that little prick was Lee Bowyer. And I hated him ever since that. And then he obviously went to Leeds and legitimised my hatred for him, which was good. But yeah, and to be fair to him, Lee Bowyer got up off the ground and scored the equaliser in that game. There was no doubt he was a very good player, but he was one of the nastiest little shits you've ever seen. And I try not to swear too much on this podcast, but when Lee Bowyer is mentioned, I'm afraid you've just got to go there. It's just one of those things. But he was a cad killer, is what he was. But that game was too.
You like holding on to things, don't you, Matt?
This is coming up to a 30-year grudge. Is this? It's 28 years since that game. So and I still don't like him from that moment. But he was a good player, wasn't he? He's probably one of the best players not to get an England. I don't think he got an England cap, did he? So he's probably one of the best never to play for England, although I probably wouldn't have done considering what went on when he lived in these neck of the woods killer around what is now the Channel 4 building around the corner from there. So less said about that, the better. So let's talk about recent form. Killer, over to you, my good man. Tell me about Charlton Athletic's recent form and how they've been going on.
Well, you can look back the last few years. So obviously Nathan Jones is there as our favourite man. You probably like him as much as you like Lee Bowyer, Matt, don't you? Really, he must be up there.
No, I've got a far more hate for Lee Bowyer than I have Nathan Jones. Nathan Jones lost his rag, but we beat them. Do you know what I mean? He didn't get the better of us, whereas Lee Bowyer, I think, probably did. To be fair, so.
But since the last time we played Charlton, Lee Bowyer was a manager at that point back in 2020, 2021. I can't remember exactly the date of the last game.
Sweet,
and Nathan
was that, mate? Sweet form.
And between then and now, Nathan Jones is actually the longest serving manager, which is ridiculous considering if you think about it, you think he's only joined a few weeks ago. But the last few seasons for Charlton have been awful. And do you know what? This feels like quite a common thing with League One teams. And I suppose that's a very often Town fans can have about where we are and where we're going to go. But behind the scenes, Charlton's had a bit of a basket case history recently with close administrations, with not dodgy owners. I think that's a term that's a bit cheap to throw around, but ownership issues. And they're trying to get it back together. The last few seasons haven't been great though, and typically you can look at the Charlton support. I like looking at forums of the opposing teams when we're playing them and doing these previews and looking around Twitter or Blue Sky nowadays. But I like to have a quick look and see what's going on and see what the feeling is. But the general consensus of the fan base is that the club's never been as low on the field, and that the performances are quite boring, that the players are poor quality compared to what they're used to. And in my lifetime, Matt, Charlton have always been, a couple of seasons in League One here and there, but a good team and a Premier League team for a lot of my life. But everything's just been a bit off for them recently. The last few seasons have been after coming down in, I can't remember what year they came down, 4 or 5 years ago. They finished 7th in the first season.
COVID
season. They finished 7th. Yeah, well, they finished 7th in the first season, and since then I think it was 13th, and then 10th, and then 16th last season, which is one of the lowest finishes they've ever had in the history of Charlton Athletic, which is ridiculous when you consider they've been in it for like 100 years, as you said before.
It's a relatively big club, isn't it? It's a big club.
Yeah, well, it is to me, but again, it's more of a perception than reality, isn't it? You kind of think based on recent history that's where they should be, but to finish at 16th in League One, that'd be one of the lowest that they've in a century is pretty ridiculous. And going into this season, then people expected quite a lot from them. I mean, some idiots on our preview had them for a top 6, including myself.
I had them, yeah.
And to be fair, they started with 3 wins in a row and did really well.
Not ruling out.
No, but they started really, really well with wins against Wigan away from home, which is no easy feat. Leyton Orient at home, and Bolton at home. And obviously, Bolton now are doing much better. But at that point of the season, they was pretty poor. But still, they got a 2-0 victory in there, playing with a back 3, which I think we'll go on to shortly, Matt, on how they set up nowadays compared to how they started in the season. But since that game, they've played 11 league games, and they've only won 2 of them. One of them being Shrewsbury, who more or less everybody's beaten at this point, or did up and when they did it in September. But they've also beaten Birmingham, which is ridiculous considering how Birmingham seasons was going again at that point. Now it's a little bit different. But it's just not quite where anybody expected it to be. The fans, or even Nathan Jones listening to it, they're playing a style of football which we will find quite similar, I think, in certain aspects, but they don't concede many goals, they don't score many goals, and they're a solid League One outfit. Another team that seems to be going through a bit of transition, a lot has gone on behind the scenes. So we've got a soundbite on, Matt, from, I think it's Charlton Live, the podcast, isn't it? But Charlton themselves have done so much. Charlton Chronicles have done a lot of work behind the scenes. The stuff they put out on YouTube is really, really good. They have a program, Charlton, where they put out once a month, where they sit around like a match of the day kind of program, where the club have a presenter and then Alan Kirbishley's on it sometimes. They've got 3 different guests, and so they're really focusing behind the scenes, which does bear quite a resemblance to what we're trying to do. And obviously, I think the Charlton owners and our owners aren't too dissimilar in looking at the infrastructure side of it. For Charlton, unfortunately, the playing side of it, obviously they lost Alfie May in the summer, so they aren't putting as much in, I don't think, into the playing side of it as we are at Huddersfield, but they've been through quite a lot of change. They seem to be getting things back in order a little bit, and the fans are now quite expectant of success or wanting it. Yet the results recently haven't kind of warranted that hope that it'll come this season. And the last few seasons have been pretty rough. But they're a team that, whilst I think have bottomed out probably last year, this year they do look better. For me, the fans don't necessarily agree with Charlton, but I'm a big believer that if you don't concede many goals, you can work on scoring goals in training. You can kind of get there. And now they aren't conceding many goals. So there is something to build upon there. It's just quite boring for Charlton fans, it seems. And it's another team up that we're going into here facing it at a time that's probably good for us and not necessarily them.
Speaking of Charlton fans, let's go now to Tyler Rowlinson. So Tyler from the Charlton Chronicles podcast has put this together for me. And I started off by asking him how things are going down there in Southeast London. Hi, Tyler. So Huddersfield and Charlton are due to go head-to-head for the first time since the 2019-20 season. It's been a little while since the two have met on the field. Can you just give us a little bit of a rundown of what's happened to Charlton? Because it's been a bit of a tumultuous time on and off the pitch for you guys, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, and that's probably putting it lightly, to be quite honest with you. I think I actually remember that game. I think we lost 4-0. Got absolutely torn apart at your ground, I think, in the Championship, and that was right in the middle of our ownership under ESI, which would turn out to be, unbeknownst to us, one of the worst ownerships in EFL history. What happened after that game? God, how long have you got? Of course, we got relegated that season from the Championship. As I said there, ESI's ownership was an utter disaster, internal civil war essentially between the chairman and the owner, led to several court appeals, relegations, near administration and liquidation, really, is essentially what nearly happened. We got saved by Thomas Sandgaard, had to build a team together through scraps and free agents in League One, somehow managed to finish 7th, which turns out to be our best finish in League One over the last 4 seasons we've been in now. This is our 5th season in League One now, which just goes to show how bad it has actually been. Just really, several managers have come and gone. Some have worked, some got sacked too early, some were just not good enough. Several ownership changes. We're now under the ownership of Global Football Partners. Charlie Meffin, of course, the former Sunderland CEO, is now our CEO and is heavily involved in the new ownership. And really, it's just been disappointment after another, to be quite honest with you. We finished 16th last season, which was our worst season in nearly a century. We've had some really poor players over the years. As I've said, several managers have come and gone. Some were sacked too early. Just a lot of managers haven't been given the time. And as it turns out, Nathan Jones, is our manager now, is actually the longest serving manager since Lee Bowyer, who was the manager when we last played you guys. So that just shows how much really has changed with Charlton. It's been very tumultuous, as you say. And, well, we've just got to hope that this has just got to end very soon. But with the way things have gone this season, it probably may take a little bit longer than we'd hope.
Yeah, it's certainly been a crazy 4 or 5 years for you guys, and hopefully you're about to come out of the darkness now into and have a bit more of a better period. But speaking of that better period, Charlton were originally flagged as one of the early season favourites for a top 6 this season. How has this season gone to date then? And are you where you expected, or do you think you're slightly underachieving for the players that you've got?
Yeah, we were tipped as a favourite for the top 6, and we have been, to be honest, for the past 4 or 5 years we've been in League One. But to be totally honest with you, after the disaster that was last season, finishing 16th, I expected us to finish outside the top 6. I just didn't think that we had the minerals and the full, complete unit, so to speak, to challenge for top 6 straight away anyway, after the season we had last year. I mean, if you look at the players that we signed and the manager that we have in Nathan Jones, you probably would think that we should be in the top 6. You know, you look at some of our signings, Luke Berry, who was in the Premier League last year, Greg Docherty from Hull, Matt Godden, Alex Mitchell, some really, a mix of some experience, but also some really good League One talent in that team. And they add to, you know, the likes of Miles Leaburn, who's been very good from the academy the last couple of seasons, and some other key names that we have amongst that team. You probably would think that we would be there, and it hasn't translated into a team that I can see can push into the top 6 from what I've seen so far. That being said, I probably would say so far that we are where I expect us to be. We're 5 points off the playoffs, 7 points off relegation, so we're probably smack bang in mid-table. But that's what I expected, if I'm being totally honest with you. I don't think, well, it's cliche saying Rome wasn't built in a day, but that's exactly the case of us, you know. I don't think success was going to be immediate. I don't think we were going to, you know, be pushing straight into the top 6 straight away. And it's not to say that we can't, you know, we're not out of it. We're only 5 points off. You know, the league is very close this season and it's still open for the taking. But with our lack of performances at the moment, it probably suggests that we're not going to get there. But to be honest, as I've said, I think we are exactly where I expected us to be. I think it's going to take time for us to really push into the top 6. We could still potentially do it, but I think it's going to take a big change in performance on the pitch for us to make that push into the top 6. So yeah, at the moment, I'd say we're probably where I expect us to be.
If you can, mate, just run us through the likely lineup of what Nathan Jones has implemented while he's been at Charlton. And I mean, Nathan Jones is not really a favourite among Huddersfield fans after the 21-22 season, so he might come in for a little stick on Saturday for historical offences. But how has he got on with you, and do you think he's the right man to lead us forward? And what's your score prediction for Saturday?
So I'd say that we're likely to line up with a back four. We did start the season with a back five, and we played pretty well actually to the start of the season. We looked a lot more organised defensively, which is what I would say has been one of Jones's strengths since the start of this season. We've looked a lot more defensively organised and stronger, but since we've had a few injuries to the team and some poor performances with the back five, we've reverted to the back four, and performances still haven't been too good, if I'm being totally honest. But that's how I'd say we're likely to set up a back four. Probably a diamond in midfield and two up front. The way that I would say we'd play in terms of the system, I would say probably long ball, which is what we've been used to playing, not just under Jones, but for the majority of our time in League One. To be honest, it's just long ball, bypassing the midfield, which hasn't shown much creativity, and trying to latch on to our tall strikers that we have up top and try and latch it on to the likes of Matt Godden, who's a bit more of a poacher in our squad. In terms of Jones, I can see why he's not a fan favourite. And to be honest, he's not a big fan amongst some Charlton fans, probably the vocal minority, I'd say. Is he the man to lead us forward? At the moment, it's probably too early to tell. I don't think he deserves to be sacked, like some Charlton fans seem to think that he should be. Personally, we've had too many managers over the years and we've not given them any time. And ultimately, this club is in need of a rebuild. So I think that Jones needs to be given the time. That being said, his football hasn't exactly been great. So it's probably too early to say whether he is the man to lead us forward. But I would give him at least this January transfer window and next summer to try and build something, because, as I said, the club is in desperate need of a rebuild. In terms of a score prediction, I can see it being a scrappy one. We haven't got a very good record against you guys and at your stadium as well. Neither team are in really great form going into this, and I don't think either set of fans are, well, some of either of the set of fans are not particularly happy with their managers. So I can see this being a cagey one. On my podcast, Charlton Chronicles, feel free to check that out, by the way, shameless plug, on Joshua Wilcox's channel. I did say that we would nick this 1-0, and I'm going to stick with that. I think we'll nick a scrappy 1-0, although I would take a 0-0. I did have a feeling that it was going to be a very scrappy 0-0 draw, and I do think a part of me thinks that could happen, but also I could see 1-0 either way. But I'm going to back us. I'm going to back us to get a result. I think we'll nick it 1-0. It'll be a tight game, but I'm very much looking forward to the game, and coming up to Huddersfield for the first time. So I'm looking forward to the game, and hopefully it's an entertaining one, but hopefully there are 3 points come Charlton's way.
Okay, so thank you to Tyler for that. So he's predicting, Killer, a very scrappy 1-0 win to Charlton. Do you know what? I love it when Tyler spoke really well there, and I love it when fans just don't they just go, do you know what? I'm just going to say what I think, and fuck it, we're going to beat you. I love that, mate. It's not, there's no banter. It's just, they just believe in the club, you know what I mean? And I like that. It's
after all the depression that it's not been the greatest season. It's a little bit boring, but we're going to win this weekend. We're the same.
Exactly.
It's the hope. Exactly. It's the hope that gets you there every Saturday. It's the hope that takes you to Crawley Town after losing to Tamworth only a week or so before.
And leads you to an early grave as well, mate. It's exactly what it does. It gives you stress and everything. It's a wonderful yet horrible thing at the same time is football. But I tell you what's wonderful and horrible at the same time, mate. And that is going to be our favourite. And that is going to be the tactics board. There we go, Killer. We are on with the tactics board now. So I know how much you love the tactics board. We love the tactics board. And do you know what? Some of the listeners are giving the tactics board a little bit of love as well, which is always nice to hear. So I was really nervous that this might be something that doesn't translate very well to to the people listening, and then people watching might find it a little bit boring. But it's doing well. So shall we go with Charlton first? I think Charlton's going to be the difficult one to work out, in all honesty, because I think Charlton potentially have a couple of players back. So Lloyd Jones is potentially back. Kane Ramsey, Chuck Zaniki, Will Mannion, and Tyrese Campbell. Not that Tyrese Campbell, but a different Tyrese Campbell. Just from listening to Tyler there, he is suggesting that they'll line up with a diamond midfield for diamond 2, if you like. And that's potentially how they would play. And they have played with a back 3 or a back 5 this season. I know Nathan Jones got a lot of success, didn't he, at Luton from a back 3 system, especially with James Bree attacking from either right centre back or right wing back. It really worked very well from him. And he's managed to bring in Luke Berry, which I think is a really interesting player as well for Charlton. And Luke Berry Premier League last year, but he's dropped down to League One for Nathan Jones, which is interesting. And he's kind of been in and out of the side. I don't think he's been completely fit. And our friend as well, Romani Edmonds-Green, has been in and out of the team as well. But it's a really interesting team, because it feels like they're just at the moment trying to find that magic formula that works. Maybe like we were during that 7 to 8 game run. You know, you just sort of chopping and changing and find something that kind of works for you. And Charlton is sort of in that way at the minute. I mean, at the minute, they're 13th in the league. They've got a game in hand on a few, but they're still 13. So if we're looking at their team, so in goal, they've got a young goalkeeper called Ashley Maynard Brewer. He's 25 years of age. He's not someone I've come across a lot, I'll be honest. He's not someone I know about, but he's only started playing last week, so he's quite new in the side. So Mannion is the other keeper, isn't it? But we'll have to sort of wait and see what the news is on that one. They've got 2 Mitchells. Imagine being near from probably the closest club to EastEnders, and they've got the Mitchell brothers at the back. They've got Zach Mitchell at right back, who should be playing in that right position. And then just inside of him, they've got another Mitchell as well, Alexander Mitchell, 23-year-old centre-back as well. So the Mitchell brothers, they're not brothers, but they got the Mitchells in right back and right centre-back, couple of enforcers there. Lloyd Jones, if he plays, could fill in at some point, but the player who's been playing is Macaulay Gillespie, who's a left-footed centre-back, so he should take this position here. And then down at left-back killer, we've got Mr. Edwards, who's got a couple of assists this season, Josh Edwards. And again, another player of a good age, ex-Dunfermline player, who's playing quite well at left-back, a couple of assists, and he can get up and down that left-hand side. And I think in a system like this where you do go diamond, your fullbacks are very important in this. And I imagine this will be where the game will be won between the two, and it'll be whoever gets to push. If they push our wing-backs back, that will cause an issue. If we can push their fullbacks right back, then that should pen them in a little bit, and then it becomes a bit of a midfield battle, doesn't it, in there? But I imagine that for us, the key will be out wide. Midfield for Charlton is up in the air, mate. Like I say, Luke Berry's a really good player, but he's been in and out. The other interesting player that they've got is Alan Campbell, who was, again, another key player for Nathan Jones at Luton, and he was smashing, didn't he, that season where we both got into the playoffs. He was a really key player for Luton during that season. But this season, he's kind of a little bit. I think he seems to just looking at the minutes he's played. He's mostly, I think, completing 90 minutes once against Barnsley. Played 117 against Southend in the cup, but again last week or 2 weeks ago now against Exeter, against 67 minutes. So he's not quite hit his straps yet. So we'll see, but I think he's one of those where if you can get him fully fit, he's very dangerous. And the same with Luke Berry as well. If they can get him fit and firing as well, he's very dangerous. So Campbell usually plays behind the front two up here, and then the midfield themselves. They've got an interesting one. They've got Connor Coventry in there, who's again more of a defensive midfielder. A bit of a tackler, if you like. Wins a lot of aerial duels. Really sort of solid. Who'll sit? He would probably be more this way. They've got Greg Docherty as well, who was at Hull. He's been a good player the last couple of years. He's an interesting player. And then Terry Taylor as well, who tends to play in the. Sounds like a darts player from the 80s, that doesn't it, or a snooker player, Terry Taylor. So he'll play in that defensive midfield position. I'm sure Terry Taylor was a wrestler, an American wrestler in the 80s. I'm gonna have to look that up. I'm sure he was like a jobber or something, jobber to the stars. But yeah, so they've got that midfield. It's interesting. There's a lot of sort of bite in there, a lot of industry, isn't there? There's no sort of clear that I can see. Obviously, I'm not as up to date on players from Coventry. Coventry. Can't even get the team right, killer. Players from Charlton as what I would be if they were in the Championship, watching them every week. But from what I've seen, they've got some good defensive players here. They've got Campbell, who's a threat. And they've got Docherty, who's a bit of a threat, but no real sort of ball player who would control the middle of the park. I don't think they're just hard work.
No, they don't. But Coventry got the call up for the Republic of Ireland. He was involved at the weekend against England at Wembley. And he's
the way ex-West Ham, isn't he?
Yeah, the way they set up, Matt, is the complaint from Charlton fans is that they're too direct. It's long ball football, hoof ball. And you can see the midfield set up there to win second balls. They get it forward as quick as they can. And if it breaks back into the midfield, they've got fighters in there that can win the ball back and get it forward again. But hassle off the ball. If they're not in possession, they're going to make it very hard for you. You're going to be shown out wide, but they're going to be so feisty in that middle that it's going to be quite hard for players like Ben Wiles, to be fair, Matt, to do too much, because they're going to be throttling that middle, and that's why they've conceded so few goals this season based on it. But the fans are actually quite disappointed with the way Docherty's come in and played. They expected more from him. They expected more from Luke Berry. He's obviously Premier League just last year, but the questioning whether, the questioning off the ball, and that again, is it a mental aspect that they're not kind of ready for that League One battle and grit and fight you have to show week in and week out, that we're learning and that we've learned similarly. Hopefully we've kind of got past that now with our recent form, but that midfield, the midfield four of and to be fair to Nathan Jones, Matt, that's not the style of football, like you said, that he likes. His midfield isn't necessarily this kind of box midfield, but he's adjusted the team that he puts out every week into that because Charlton need it, because they're lacking out wide. But that midfield will be tough for us to kind of to break down and break through.
Yeah, I think that's why Tyler's gone for that scrappy 0-0, 1-0, hasn't he? And I can see why. Up front, they've got a player I was touting for Town a couple of years ago in Miles Leaburn, and then he did his ACL. Or he had a serious knee injury. He's only 20. Some people might remember his dad, Carl Leaburn, who played for Charlton in the 80s, 90s. Really tall striker, touched like an axe murderer. That kind of old fashioned striker. You know what I mean? Absolute. You know what I mean? Second touch is a GBH tackle. He's one of those. But he scored goals and he was big and strong and players you love, Killer. Those big sort of centre forwards. But his son Miles Leaburn.
Can't get enough of him.
I know his son Miles Leaburn was on absolute fire a couple of years ago, and he looked like he was going to be. And he's 6'5", and he's got a great touch. So he looked like he was going to be the next big thing. But he's just really coming back from injury now, and he's going to be the one they aim for because of his height. But I don't necessarily think he's like his dad just yet because he's quite young. So I think he can be a little bit. He'll get better. He's a good player. But up front, they've got the experienced player in Matty Godden, who's just really good at just finding those pockets of space where the ball might land. He's a decent striker. He's been a decent striker for a while, and he was good for Coventry in the Championship recently as well. He's got 4 goals, same as Berry, joint top scorer. He's interesting. I think where Charlton will be hoping they'll be hoping Lloyd Jones is fit, because I think that centre back. I think he's one of their key players. So it wouldn't surprise me if him and Mannion came straight in if they were fit. But I think it looks like Leaburn up front with him. Oh, and they've also got the guy that they signed from Ipswich as well. Did they get him from Ipswich? Is it Hadmi?
Yeah, they did, yeah.
Yeah, so they've got him as well, who's a decent outlet as well, big striker. So he's going to be another one who's a bit of a pest, mate. And I think that's
and they've got expectations, Matt, with him. They dropped $1 million on him. He's not coming in as an all-rounder. They'd be given the 9 shirt, and they've spent quite a lot of money on him. But Matt Godden's been good. I watched the game back against Exeter. So last time out in the league, they lost 1-0. And Matty Godden were great. Honestly, he should have scored 2 or 3 goals. It's ridiculous that Charlton didn't get something out of that game. And realistically, they had enough chances to win. But they've got. It's surprising, Matt, looking that they've scored 15 and conceded 15. It's no surprise that they're good at the back because they don't give too many chances away. But with the striking options that they've got, and considering Alpha May scored 38,000 last season, you'd think between the 3 options that they've got up top, they would score more goals between them as strikers, but it just hasn't clicked for them yet. But I do feel like it will do soon. I just hope it's not this weekend.
Yeah, I think there's a. Like I said, there've been injuries. I think there's the makings of a fairly decent team here. It just kind of needs to fit together a little bit better. Greg Docherty, obviously, I think he's a good player when he finds himself. Alan Campbell, if he can get fit, is a good player. Connor Coventry, I think, is decent. I liked him when he was at West Ham, and he went out on loan. I think it was to MK Dons or something. He looked his number, and You've even got players like Tyrese Campbell, Daniel Kahn, who are decent young strikers. They've got Chuck Zaniki, who's been around for years. He's an awkward customer. So it's not a bad team at all, to be honest. It's going to be interesting. So I'm hopeful that some of these players don't come back in, because if they do, it's going to be difficult. I mean, Town themselves, how we expect to line up. I think Jacob Chapman will line up in goal. Lee Nichols isn't back yet. The back three is going to be interesting. I think it'll be Lonvik, left centre back. Matty Pearson, I think, will carry on at right centre back. I think Mikael Helik will come into the middle. He'll match the height, won't he, of Lieburn. I think he'd be fine in that role, even if he's not quite 100%. I'm sure Tom Lees will be on the bench, but he's just got that height, hasn't he, for the long balls. You got Matty Pearson next to him as well. They will target Lonvik with that, so they'll want their strikers peeling onto Lonvik because he would be the weaker of the three. Obviously better on the deck than the other two, but weaker in the air of the other three. So I would imagine that Lieburn will try and peel to that side and try and nod a diagonal into the box for Matty Godden looking in around there, and that's where Helik and Pearson can be caught a little bit with that second ball, can't they, into an angle? And we've seen that before, but we'll be hopeful that that's not the case. Mikael Miller is the out-and-out choice, isn't he, at the moment for left wing back? And I think he's the person this game might hinge on in a lot of ways. I think Brodie Spencer might get the right wing. He's just played 2 games for Northern Ireland, hasn't he? So it wouldn't surprise me if they went turn, just because he's played those 2 games. I mean, Callum Marshall hasn't, so Callum Marshall will be a bit fresher. But Brodie, he seems quite a fit, energetic young lad who can, who can get up and down the flank for 90 minutes and be fine. But at some point, I think they might look to manage that, whether it's Tuesday or today, or they may even start him and bring him off at some point just to save him. But Mikael Miller for me is the one that I'm looking at to push their right back. And I think the best way Town will score is if Miller and Spencer can get really deep here and bring the ball across. It's going to be congested in there, but that's why one of the strikers I'm picking would be important for a game like this. So midfield for me picks itself again. Herbie Kane, David Kasumu, new contract. I was quite surprised at a lot of the negativity about Kasumu's new contract, but we'll cover that on the review show. Ben Wiles is the man that you want there. And then up front, it's interesting, Killer, because we've been going with Bojan and Marshall recently, but I would probably change it up. And for me, I think Reece Healy has to come in. He's got 2 goals recently. There is that worry that, of how fit he is and whether but you've got to play your best players and manage it effectively. I think Reece Healy needs to come in, and it's who he comes in with, which is interesting. I think when games are tight like this, somebody who can just do something from nothing outside the box, like Josh Koroma, can be really important. It could be a really tight game. They get deeper and deeper. Josh just drops off 25 yards and smacks one far side, and things happen. So for me, it'd be Healy and Koroma, but I imagine both of them won't be entirely fit. So I'm not sure who partners Reece Healy here, whether they would go with Marshall for the legs or Bojan for the continuity. I would go with Marshall if Josh Koroma's not fit. Bojan's I've fallen out with him a little bit the last few weeks. I'm not going to slag him off or anything, but I've fallen out with him. I wanted it to work so much and him to work hard, but there's something not clicking there. And I think it might be time to rotate that. If not, he gets my full support, obviously, but there's just something not quite working there. And I to be honest with Bojan, I think to get the best out of him, you need to get players to the byline and pull the ball back. Same with Ladapo, and we don't do that. So I don't think he's the striker that will get a lot out of at the minute. So for me, Reece Healy, because he's clever at finding those spaces in tight areas. Koroma, if he's fit, if he's not, Callum Marshall. That's the way I would go with it, mate.
Yeah, I think that back 9 picks itself, doesn't it? The first 9.
Yeah.
Helik's got to come straight back in. I thought he was good against the United under-21s. And again, I know you've got to preface that it's Man United under-21s. It's a total different thing.
That right winger was good, He was good.
Oh, left back were worth 13 million. Ethan Ennis?
Yeah, Malacia. He was good as well.
But, yeah, he was. He was classy. He looked great. But the midfield were good against them as well. And that was more or less first choice midfield we had for most of the game after Upenda went off injured. I think we missed Sorensen on this one, Matt. I'd like Sorensen down that right-hand side for this game, especially if Charlton play a back 4, because it means you're going man for man up top. When our wing-backs push on and 2 strikers, they're going to have 4-on-4 at the back. I actually have a sneaky feeling, though, Matt, and this is a bit late, 30 minutes into the preview, that they might go with a back 3 again for this one, because I feel like if Charlton play with a back 4, it really leads into us, and like you say, Miller doing a lot of damage down that side because they won't be able to chase back. all our attacks come down the wing anyway, so it's all right.
Come out,
yeah,
basically,
and it's all right. Then they can smash the middle, right, and that'll stop Wiles doing too much. But that's not how he plays either. We don't really play through the middle. We play out wide. So for me, if Charlton go with what they've been doing recently, I think I'll have two predictions at the end of this. One, if I think they go with a back four, and one for a back five, because I think it's that crucial and that critical to how this game will play out. But for me, Matt, up top, I'm with you. I think Healy's got to start. If there's a sniff of a goal, it's him that pops it in. I think Koroma has to start if he's fit. I'm his biggest fan. I think he's been our best nine. When
I have to say, did you buy a conch from Amazon just for Josh Koroma? Because until you do,
yeah, okay. Well, number two.
You'll have to be treasurer of the fan club rather than the founder.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll be Ben Wiles' number one fan, because when everybody hated him, I was still there singing his praises. I'll be number two for Koroma. But I just see you handing your Bojan Radulovic card back in there, Matt. You're not a part of that fan club anymore. Not for the rest of the.
I want to be.
Future.
I want to be, but he's got to do a bit more for me. He's got to do a bit more.
And I'm with you though. I think if Sorensen plays, the chances he kind of creates by pulling it back, because he is that guy that you're talking about when you get to the wing and pull it back. Neither Turton nor Spencer offer that. With me, it's Healy and Koroma. And behind that, I think Danny Ward. Honestly, Matt, next man up is Danny Ward.
It did cross my mind. It did cross my mind to Danny Ward.
But he's like your Healy replacement, isn't he? I wouldn't want Healy and Ward. I want both of them at the same time. So I'd be going Marshall as well if Koroma's not fit. But I thought Danny Ward, a hungry Danny Ward, is an asset for any team in this division. It's just when he's fit and when he's hungry. And we've seen it too often, I think, where that's not necessarily the case. But for this game, Healy and Koroma have to start for me. And if it's not working, though, Koroma's the player. I just don't understand what's happening with Marshall. A few weeks ago, you and I are there saying he's the first striker on the team sheet. But since then, I've not really seen his performances drop too much.
Peaks and troughs, mate, isn't it? Peaks and troughs for young players.
But he seems to be the first one pulled out, doesn't he, Matt? If anything's going wrong, Radulovic's been given the option to stay on. I think it's because of his aerial prowess, and I use that term very lightly. But he comes deep as well and picks up the ball in midfield a little bit from the deep line playmakers.
His linking's a little bit better, isn't it?
It's a little bit better, but Marshall's been hooked off straight away.
It's not bad.
Game after game. So I don't expect him to be given that shout. But to be fair to Michael Duff, he's done some strange things this year when it comes to picking strikers. So I have absolutely zero idea what to go with. But I'd be with Healy and Koroma anyway.
Yeah, I think, like you say, I think if they go with that diamond, it depends. For us, we've got to go wide and then draw their midfielders, and then that opens your space there for Ben Wiles, doesn't it? To do Ben Wiles things, or even Kane and Kasumu to come as a secondary. What do they call them? Second men runs and third men running and stuff like that. So you get that, and up front, I think Helic and Pearson have got enough to contain the aerial threat. What we ideally want is Helic and Pearson being the aerial defenders and Lonvijk being the one. I know Lonvijk has that habit of having a lapse every now and then, and I think we had that discussion, didn't we, about in WhatsApp about Miller maybe getting away with it a little bit against Crawley for that goal, because I don't think people.
Oh, here you go, Matt. All right, yeah. Okay, I said I'd apologise for this.
You said you'd apologise to my mate Nige, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I nailed Nige on this one, saying I don't understand why he's on the beach. What is he doing? He's so far off. And to be fair to him, Matt, you pointed it out. Mikel Miller is off the field, injured or trying to regain his.
He's coming back on slowly. He's coming back on slowly. Yeah,
and it isn't on the highlights, and it isn't on the game tape. So it's hard to spot where he is, isn't it, Matt? When you look back
honestly, you just see Miller's shadow
for an instant. So I think you're right, and I think Nigel is trying to do the best he can, knowing that Miller's playing everybody on side. So Nigel, if you're listening, mate, I apologise. And if I get to meet you at any point this year, I will apologise wholeheartedly on behalf of everybody else that picked him out as well, because it wasn't just me. I just want to make that one known.
There you go. I have to stick up for Nige, because he obviously, my little boy walked out with him against Exeter, so we've got the bond. We got the bond with Nige. But yeah, I think that's it, mate, for the tactics board in general. So we'll if you're watching the pod, that's enough. If you're listening, the tactics board. But essentially, what we think will Town's best options are, if they play that system, it'll be Town attacking wide. If they go 3-5-2 and match Town up, then it's going to be a different game, isn't it? I mean, they could bring Lloyd Jones in, and that makes it more difficult. And I think man to man, that then leads to sort of a couple of checkmate scenario or check scenarios, doesn't it? And it's going to be more difficult, mate. But In terms of predictions, then Tyler from Charlton Chronicles says 0-0 or 1-0 to Charlton. What are you going with?
I'd agree with him, kind of. I'd be saying 0-0 if it is a 3-5-2 versus a 3-5-2. I think if they shift back to what they did initially, I think it'd be very hard for Town to break down because Nathan Jones sets up his team that way. And I think looking man for man, that had caused us a lot of problems. Probably 0-0, 1-1. It'd be a draw. I think they're built to not to beat us, but to control the game a bit. If that's how they go against us. If they play with a midfield 4, as he suggests they will do, and that they have been doing recently, I think we'll overload them down the sides, Matt, and I don't think they'll be able to cope with us very well. They've conceded quite a few goals recently. Well, they haven't conceded many goals in the season, but against Exeter was a front post run from a corner, which we've scored from very recently. So they're not great at set pieces again. And in the game before, I think they drew 2-2. I can't remember it off the top of my head. And both of the goals came from headers and pullbacks. They ain't great at crosses and set pieces. And as it happens, that seems to be League One week in and week out. We seem to be saying the same thing. But I think Hildred will be good for a goal in this one if they play as they have been doing recently. In a 2-0 win, I think it'll be a comfortable 2-0 win for Town with Wiles and Hildred scoring for us this week, which is rare, isn't it, Matt, to go for 2 goals and not with a striker scoring. But I feel like if they stick with what they normally do, we'll overload them and they'll struggle to keep up with us.
I'm going to go for 2-1 to Town. I think they might make it interesting, and I'm going to go with, because I'm looking at their last few games, and they beat Bromley 1-0. They lost 1-0 to Exeter in a tight game. Conceded 3 against Southend in the FA Cup, but I don't think you can count that too much. But and then cups aside, the 2-2 against Wrexham and 2-2 against Barnsley, who are in a similar area to us in terms of the table. So I'm kind of looking at 2 goals, and I think Charlton have very much got it in them to get something from us, and we've got it in us to throw a bad one in, which will happen between now and Christmas, 100%, because it's just the way that our squad is, isn't it? But I'm going to go 2-1, but I think it's going to be a bit of a nervy one, and I just think that it'll be the reaction. I think Town fans will be brilliant on Saturday because it's Nathan Jones, and Huddersfield fans are great when there's a pantomime villain to aim their vitriol at rather than their own players. So they'll have Nathan Jones. I just think there'll be a little bit of a lift in the crowd, and I think that might just carry the team. I think sometimes fans don't understand how important that is, just to have that lift for the players. And I feel like it's going to be someone really random who scores, maybe Kasumu or something, who's going to get, just like all of our options will be checked by Charlton. I just think it'll come from somewhere really random, like Lonvike, Kasumu, Miller, someone that you don't expect to open it up. And then I think once we get in front, someone like Healy or one of the strikers Healy, Wiles, Karoma, someone like that could come in with a second, and then maybe Matty Godden scrambles one in for a tight finish. But I think it's going to be a tight game. I think it's going to be good. And I still fancy Charlton to get towards the top 6 towards the end of the season. I think they've got a relatively good set. They just need maybe one or two things to go their way, and any injuries, and I think they kind of struggle. But I still fancy it. But let's have a look round the grounds, Killer, to finish off. We've been going on way too long here. This is going to end up an hour. We're yakkering on here.
Can't help it, Matt. We just can't help it. That's just where we're at. We've had an international break again, so of course we need to just get through 2 weeks worth of previews.
Bolton versus Blackpool's interesting. Bolton need a win, don't they, after losing recently? They looked like they were back in, didn't they? And then all of a sudden back out with a bad defeat, and now I think they need a reaction against Blackpool. Shrewsbury versus Birmingham. Yeah, I think everyone would expect Birmingham to go there. And it's relatively local. It's not a million miles away. It's the more sort of local to Wolves, aren't they? I guess Shrewsbury, but so there may be a little bit of needle. You never know, do you? When there's a little bit of needle somewhere. Could potentially, but I would expect Birmingham to win that. Stevenage versus Orient is interesting. That's on Sky Sports Plus at 12:30, so you can get a look at Town's opponents for Tuesday. Come in. Barnsley versus Wigan. Do you know, ever since Carlo poured his heart out to us after we beat them, Barnsley have been really good, and they've been in the top 6. And he was like going, I don't know what's happening. I don't know how we're supposed to play. I don't know this, and it just looks a mess. They've been good. They've been good, Barnsley, since we beat
John Russell looks unbelievable. Honestly, he looks incredible. Honestly, just don't bother with the full games, right? But I just take my word for it. He's incredible in all the games. Anything that they do, he's their Ben Wiles this season. Anything that happens at Barnsley do going forward, don't throw Keeler done. Nah, not him. John Russell, who they had down as one of the worst signings ever, having him left us to go to them over the first few months. They thought it was awful, but John Russell, honestly, he's turning on for Barnsley, and it's no surprise, is it? What a top quality Mormon footballer, as Fotheringham used to refer to him as.
He did, didn't he? He's a strange man. Burton versus Stockport. Stockport have come again. Stockport are back in the top 6. It shows how unpredictable League One is. I'd expect them to carry on the good form there. Burton, new manager syndrome though, maybe new bounce. I think they've got rid of theirs, haven't they? Crawley versus Rotherham. I think that's going to be tough for Rotherham. Crawley are quite an awkward outfit, as we found. Lincoln versus Wickham. Wickham are on fire, but I just feel like at some point it's surely got to unravel. But when you look at their team on paper, it's pretty good. It's pretty good, that Wickham
They've got good
team.
strikers, Matt. They score goals, and they score goals pretty easily.
And they've got a good defense, good midfielder.
If they get a win, and if they get a win at Lincoln,
if they win that, then Wickham should be taken seriously. I mean, I'm taking them seriously, but that'd be a good win away at Lincoln because they're decent. Lincoln. Mansfield versus Bristol Rovers. Mansfield are just tailing off slightly, but that could get them back on track. Northampton versus Cambridge, a bit of a derby down there, isn't it? Ish, between the Shires. Interesting one. I think both. Cambridge have come. You gave them a kiss of death, didn't you, Killer Cambridge? Because they just started playing well and then went to Peterborough and got slapped silly, didn't they? It was a good day for them, that a local derby. Blame you for that. Peterborough versus Reading.
To them as well. I'll apologise to everybody. Longvic, sorry,
just an apology show, this, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, man.
Killer's apology tour, driving 8. Peterborough versus Reading, interesting. Peterborough have started to click a little bit, but they're very much good. They make hay when the sun shines at Peterborough, don't they? If they're allowed to attack and do things, they're very dangerous. If they're not, then Reading are quite a stodgy team. Do you know, they can kind of stodge. So that's interesting. And then Wrexham versus Exeter. I would imagine Wrexham, who've dropped slightly recently, but I imagine they'll get back on the horse there against Exeter. So it's some interesting ones, mate, isn't there, coming up? And then Tuesday we've got almost a full fixture list again, haven't we? With some more interesting football with us at Leyton Orient and Wrexham against Lincoln and Wickham at home to Mansfield. So there's quite a lot going on in the league.
But Matt, we're back into it now. No international break until March. Is this double banging fixtures most weeks now between, and obviously with Sky Plus, obviously it's better to go to the game, but most of us can even watch it from home if that's necessary on the Tuesday night games. It's a real feast of football, a festival of football for the next few months.
Feast of
However, will the fat man Steve Evans manage to get out this weekend with a job? That's this is the question, Matt. They're not.
I heard that Tony Stewart, the owner from Rotherham, was booing his own team off in his seat. I thought that was amazing. He's literally stood there. The owner's booing. I mean, people complain about.
You can all want your championship. Yeah, you want your championship football, your Premier League. Nah, not me. I want my League One owners abusing their own managers on TV. The commentators loving it. Everyone giving it. Oh, that's. Do you know what, Matt? That's real football to me, and I'm in for all of it.
Beautiful. I think that's next week. Join us for the review show next week. We've got another special guest hopefully lined up. Myself and Killer will be back, and maybe the big bald bear. Okay, thank you and farewell. Or shall we say ta-ta and farewell?
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, they're the pride of the town, and the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? and then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.